He left me for another woman, his debt, my son's epic revenge tears. He left me for another woman, his debt, my son's epic revenge tears. That's what I thought when I sat down and typed this out. I'd gone over it 1,000,000 times. I'm still pretty raw, even after all this time. It was like the world had cracked open and swallowed me whole, leaving nothing but the echo of a life I thought I had. This is the story of how I picked up the pieces, how I found my strength again, and how my sons, bless their hearts, gave their deadbeat father a taste of his own medicine. If you've ever been screwed over, betrayed, and left holding the bag, you'll get it. Stick around and hit that like and subscribe button if you want to hear more real-life revenge stories. It all started so normal. David and I, we were high school sweethearts. We built a life together, a house, a business, 2 incredible boys. We had a love that everyone envied. At least, that's what I thought. I was running the office, managing the books, basically keeping the whole operation afloat while David charmed clients and, well, charmed. I thought we were partners in crime, until I found out I was just the crime. The scent of coffee always takes me back. We used to have coffee together every morning before the boys were awake, before the day's chaos. I'd make it just the way he liked it, strong and black with a splash of cream. We'd sit at the kitchen table, the early morning sun streaming through the window, painting stripes of light on the floor. We'd talk about everything and nothing, the plans for the day, the dreams for the future. He would talk about the business, the clients he was meeting, the deals he was working on. I would listen, offer advice, always believing in him, always supporting him. Those mornings, now, they feel like a dream. A beautiful, perfect dream that was shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. The first sign was the late nights. David started working later and later, saying he had big projects. The excuse sounded plausible at first. The construction business was booming, and he was always the one chasing the biggest contracts. But then the excuses became more frequent, the calls more secretive, the business trips that seemed to drag on and on. He'd be distant, emotionally unavailable. He'd sit across from me at dinner, but his eyes would be somewhere else. His smile seemed forced. The affection, the touch, the way we used to look at each other, it vanished. I chalked it up to stress, a midlife crisis. I mean, who doesn't go through that, right? I thought he was struggling with the pressure, that it was just a phase. I was a fool. A naive, trusting fool. I remember the specific Tuesday like it was yesterday. The rain was coming down in sheets, drumming against the windows, mirroring the turmoil brewing inside me. I was working late, trying to catch up on invoices, when I decided to grab his phone to call a contact for him. I needed to find the right number to call a client, and since he was out of the office, his phone was the only option. I unlocked it without a second thought. We always shared everything. No secrets. No hidden files. No passwords. That's what I thought. That's when I saw it. A text message. The notification popped up as I was scrolling through the phone. A text message from her. The name. Melissa. I knew her. I'd met her at a charity event, a sleek, polished woman, very different from me. I didn't think much of it at the time. She was a client, one of his bigger ones. But now, seeing the name, my blood ran cold. I froze. My hands started to shake. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I tapped the message, and the words jumped out at me, sharp and clear. Can't wait to see you again, my love. I felt my stomach drop. Everything went cold. The world tilted. It was like someone had ripped the rug out from under me, leaving me standing on nothing. It was a physical sensation, a void opening in my chest, a bottomless pit of dread. I kept reading, scrolling through the messages, each one a fresh stab to the heart. They were full of longing, of promises, of secret rendezvous. They spoke of a life, a future, that did not include me. He had built a whole other world, right under my nose. He had built a new life with her. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every action, every moment we had shared. It all took on a different light. Suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the business trips, the distance. It wasn't stress. It was a secret life. A betrayal. Her name was Melissa, a younger, prettier, shinier version of me. Or, at least, that's how David saw her. She was a client, someone he'd been wooing for months, according to the email trail I discovered. The affair wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was a complete dismantling of our life together. I felt like I had walked into a house, seen every room, then turned around to find it was no longer there. He moved out the next day. Just packed a bag and vanished, leaving me staring at an empty house, a mountain of debt, and two heartbroken sons. I remember the sound of the door closing behind him, the final click echoing through the house, sealing my fate. It felt like the end of the world. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the aftermath. David left me with everything. The business was drowning in debt, our savings were depleted, and the mortgage was, well, it was looming. He declared bankruptcy, of course, conveniently clearing his own debts. He left me scrambling, terrified, trying to keep everything afloat. He wasn't just leaving me, he was abandoning his sons. And the cruelty? The sheer, blatant cruelty? He didn't even look back. The only words he offered were, "It's over. I'm with Melissa now." He didn't even have the decency to offer any explanation, any remorse. Just a clean break. I was devastated. The world I knew, the future we had planned, shattered into a million pieces. I cried for days, drowning in a sea of grief and anger. How could he do this? How could he throw away our life, our family, for her? How could he abandon the boys? It was a wound that bled, a pain that I couldn't escape. My sons, Michael and Alex, were heartbroken too. They adored their father, but they saw the truth. They saw the emptiness in his eyes, the callous disregard. Michael, the older one, was a quiet observer, taking everything in, his jaw clenched with anger. Alex, the younger, was more openly emotional, crying himself to sleep, questioning everything he thought he knew. The first few weeks were a blur of lawyers, financial advisors, and mountains of paperwork. I worked double shifts, selling off anything of value, just to keep us from going under. I remember the days I didn't eat, just so I could feed my boys. I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I had bags under my eyes, but there was something in them, a steely determination. A fire had been lit, and I was ready to burn. The house felt empty, the laughter and warmth replaced by a cold, heavy silence. We sat together, eating meals in near silence, just the clinking of forks and the occasional sniffle. The boys stayed close to me, their arms around me, offering silent comfort. It was a bond forged in fire, a love that would sustain us through the darkest of times. Then, one night, Michael, maybe 16 at the time, looked at me with a look of pure fury in his eyes. His hands were clenched into fists, and his eyes were blazing. "Mom," he said, his voice tight with anger, "we can't let him get away with this." I stared at him, stunned. I hadn't let myself think about retribution, about revenge. I was too busy just trying to survive. But there it was, the seed of an idea, planted in the heart of my son. Alex, 14 at the time, nodded, his eyes mirroring his brother's anger. He wiped his tears and said, "He can't just do this to us, Mom." The two of them, they were hurting just as bad as I was. They'd seen the way David treated me. They knew the truth. They knew what he had done. And they were ready to fight. That's when I realized something. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my sons, about showing them that even in the face of betrayal, we could rise above. It was about reclaiming our dignity. And, yes, it was about getting even. The plan started small, a whisper of an idea. We started small. We learned David had left us with so much debt it was a crime. He was always looking to make a buck, and that's where we started. We discovered that he hadn't filed all the necessary paperwork to officially dissolve his share in the business. It was all still under his name, meaning he was still technically liable for all the outstanding debts. We got in touch with every single creditor, every single client, and anyone else that David had screwed over in the past. We helped them file claims. We helped them seek legal recourse. We watched, knowing that David would be drowning in paperwork soon enough. It felt good. It was a small step, but it was something. It was a way of taking control, of fighting back. The pain was still there, raw and fresh, but with each small victory, the fire within me burned a little brighter. We had a good friend, Tom, who knew an investigative accountant. He was a wizard with numbers. I explained the situation. Tom and his friend, Bob, helped us piece together a clear picture of David's finances. It turned out David had been playing the system for years, siphoning money, hiding assets, the whole 9 yards. He was a regular crook. Tom also knew how to put the word out. I had friends, family, people who knew people. The word got around pretty quickly. We had a lot of support. People hated David, especially after he abandoned his family. The boys were instrumental in the plan. They helped me gather information, discreetly, quietly. Michael, with his knack for computers, figured out a way to access David's email and his bank statements. I'm not proud of it, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Alex, the quieter one, used his artistic talent to forge a few key documents. I never told him to do that. He told me he had, and I didn't stop him. He was just doing what needed to be done to protect his mother. We had all been wronged. The weight of the world felt heavy. We were juggling debt, the ever-present fear of losing the house, the constant emotional turmoil. But with each other, we began to heal. I watched my sons grow stronger, more resilient, their love for me a shield against the storm. It was a long, slow burn, a war of attrition. We weren't looking for a quick win, we were looking for a complete wipeout. We waited, we watched, and we gathered information. The first real blow came when the IRS started sniffing around. We had given them just enough information to tip them off. They started asking questions about David's taxes. Then came the lawsuits, the legal letters piling up on David's doorstep. Each day, David was losing more and more. I could almost feel his panic, the slow realization that he had underestimated us. He was accustomed to winning, to getting his way. He wasn't used to being the victim. And that, I realized, was my victory. The second phase of the plan centered around David's new life with Melissa. Remember Melissa? The woman that David abandoned his family for? The boys did some digging and discovered that David had been flaunting his wealth, buying a ridiculously expensive sports car, a brand new house, all the fancy things. He was living the high life, while the house he owned with me sat in foreclosure. Michael found an old high school friend of David's, a guy named Kevin. He contacted Kevin and found out everything about David's affair with Melissa. They would exchange secret messages on their phones, talking about their love and how they could not be separated. We leaked everything to the newspapers. Pictures of David and Melissa, love letters that went on for days. It didn't take long for the scandal to hit. Clients left, investors pulled out. David's company started to crumble. Melissa found out about his debt to society, how he played the system. She left him. Everything that David had built was starting to collapse around him. We were systematically dismantling everything that he held dear. The look on his face when he got out of the car was priceless. But the real genius, the true moment of epic revenge, came from the boys. David's new, expensive sports car. Well, a few well-placed phone calls and a little bit of tampering, and it was gone. Not stolen, mind you. Just in a very inconvenient location. I can't go into details, but let's just say the car ended up in a place where it was impossible to retrieve. David was in a cold sweat and called the police. But there was nothing they could do. Then, there was the house. David's shiny new house. The one he bought with Melissa. The boys had done some digging and found out that David's mortgage was a complete mess. Some tricky legal maneuverings, and the bank realized the loan wasn't legal. They took the house. And so, David was homeless. And, yes, that was just another level of misery. The satisfaction I got from seeing David's world crumbling was immense. But the greatest joy was the look on my sons' faces. They had stood up to their father and they had won. They had taken back our family's honor. I remember that moment, the three of us, sitting on the floor, looking at each other. The boys were laughing, and I started to cry. But this time, it was tears of joy. The house was still a wreck. We had no money. We had to fight for everything. It was a huge weight on me, but I was not alone. I had these two young men. They stood up for me. I will never forget that. I received a call from him one day. I didn't answer it for a couple of days. Finally, I picked up. He sounded broken, defeated. He pleaded with me to stop, said he was sorry, that he'd made a mistake. Please, he begged. I can't take it anymore. I didn't say anything. Just listened. I let him pour out his heart, his regrets. When he was finished, I hung up. I was quiet. I hadn't been able to do that for a long time. He never called again. Did I feel bad? A little. But mostly, I felt relief. The weight, the anger, it had finally lifted. I'd been fighting for so long, that it's hard to remember the good times. But seeing him brought me back to those first days. Those first dates. The joy of family, of love, and of building a life together. I'm still healing, but I'm stronger now. Because I know that I can survive anything. What happened to David? I really don't know. The last I heard, he was working odd jobs, bouncing from one place to another. He lost everything, his job, his house, his friends. He was alone. He didn't deserve anything, not after what he did. It wasn't easy. The legal battle. Dragged on for years. We had to sell our house, downsize, start from scratch. But we did it. We came out stronger, more resilient, and infinitely closer as a family. My sons, they're amazing young men now. They're kind, compassionate, and they know the value of loyalty. They know the importance of standing up for what's right. They know that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about healing. The money, well, we're still not rich. But we're happy. We have each other. We have our health. We have our freedom. And we have a story to tell. A story of betrayal, of heartache, of resilience, and of the sweet, sweet taste of revenge. I've learned a lot through all this. I learned the value of true friends. I learned that the most important thing in life is family. I learned that it's okay to be angry, to grieve, to feel all the messy emotions. And I learned that sometimes, justice is served, even when it seems impossible. It won't bring back those years lost, but it did give me a peace of mind I hadn't had in years. It's been years since that day. Michael is studying computer science. Alex is pursuing his art. They're thriving. They're happy. And I'm finally at peace. I've learned to forgive, not because David deserved it, but because I deserved it. Because holding on to the anger, the bitterness, was only hurting me. This whole experience changed me. It made me stronger, more independent, and more determined than ever. I've rebuilt my life. I started my own business. And I'm happy. I met someone. We're happy. I'm surrounded by people who love me, and that is all that matters. So, to anyone out there who's been through a similar experience, remember this: you are stronger than you think. You are not alone. And sometimes, the best revenge is a life well lived. Don't let anyone steal your joy. Don't let anyone dim your light. Hold your head high, and keep moving forward. The entire experience taught me how to be grateful. I'm grateful for my sons. I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned. I'm grateful for the people who stood by me. I'm most grateful for the fact that I survived. We survived. We never heard from David again, although I saw him from time to time. His body language always betrayed his feelings. Sadness. Shame. Regret. I was glad that he knew he messed up. I could look him in the eye, and I didn't feel an ounce of emotion, except for a slight distaste. It was as if I was looking at someone I never knew. And I knew, in my heart, that I did the right thing. My sons did the right thing. Even if some people judge us. Because at the end of the day, what mattered was the fact that we stuck together. And we survived. So what do you think, guys? Was the revenge too harsh? Was it justified? Do you have any similar stories? I'd love to hear them. Drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for listening, and remember, never let anyone walk all over you. And if they do, well, sometimes a little bit of epic revenge can be the sweetest medicine. The sting of that first text message, the cold reality of his betrayal, never truly faded. The image of his face, a stranger I thought I knew, haunted my dreams. The question of how he could abandon us, the children he once cradled, the life he had built, echoed in the hollow spaces of the house. The physical manifestation of that pain was so severe that I began to develop chronic migraines. I often awoke with the world spinning, unable to stand or even sit upright. I began to question my own sanity. But I also had 2 young sons staring at me with hope and expectation. If I was going down, so were they. I had to make a choice. I could wallow in the despair and become another victim of his actions, or I could fight back. I chose to fight. The day David left was a turning point, a harsh reminder of the fragility of trust and the depth of human cruelty. Yet, within the wreckage, something else took root, a resolve to not only survive but to reclaim what was rightfully ours. We were not the only victims. Melissa had been caught up in David's web. The creditors, the clients, the vendors, all were caught in his manipulations. A collective desire to hold him accountable began to form. The legal battles were brutal and protracted. Bankruptcy can be a shield for the wealthy, a loophole that allows them to escape the consequences of their actions. But we fought every step of the way, guided by the unwavering determination of my sons, and supported by friends and family who refused to let us fall. The first wave of our revenge came in the form of debt. David had been sloppy, overconfident in his ability to outsmart everyone. The construction company was drowning in debt. And as it turned out, much of that debt was still under his name, despite the divorce and the bankruptcy he had filed. With the help of our friend Tom, we found an accountant who was as sharp as a whip. He unearthed a host of misdeeds that David had attempted to hide. We got in touch with every single creditor. We assisted them in filing claims, providing evidence of David's shady dealings. Slowly but surely, David's empire began to crumble. Michael and Alex were the first two people I told. The boys were both young, but the pain on their faces, the tears in their eyes, were a constant reminder of what we'd lost. I was so ashamed that I couldn't protect them from their father's actions. But when I told them what I was going to do, their eyes lit up. The first rays of sunshine had appeared in a long, dark tunnel. I sat down at the kitchen table and showed them the evidence. I showed them the emails, the bank statements, the invoices. And then I looked at my sons, and I saw not just my children, but my allies. Michael, already showing a talent for computers, began digging through David's online accounts. He found evidence of hidden assets, of questionable financial transactions. He discovered that David was still trying to siphon money from the company, even after he had left. Alex, always creative, had a knack for crafting documents. He started making copies of documents. We'd meet in the basement, under a dim, flickering light. We would work together. We were a team. We moved with the precision of a surgical team. We carefully documented every step, every piece of evidence. We worked together, meticulously building our case. With the help of Tom's accountant friend, we were able to assemble a comprehensive file that detailed David's financial malfeasance. We compiled the documents, prepared the paperwork, and then waited. As the weeks turned into months, we watched as the walls began to close in on David. The IRS came calling. Lawsuits piled up on his doorstep. His business was teetering on the brink of collapse. Each blow was a victory for us, a testament to our collective resilience. The second phase was the exposure of his affair with Melissa. Melissa, the shiny new woman David had chosen over his family. We decided to expose everything to the public. The boys did a lot of digging. The same guy who had leaked the texts and messages between David and Melissa also gave us pictures of David. They also found pictures of the house that David had bought with Melissa. We leaked the story to the newspapers, to the local gossip blogs. We ensured that his new clients and partners were aware of his past and his true nature. The first shot was David's company. It was one of the biggest construction companies in the city, and its reputation was important to its owners. We gave them the information, and they passed it on. Suddenly, David's reputation was in tatters. Clients pulled out, investors fled. The life he had built with Melissa began to crumble. The scandal was a public spectacle, a public takedown of a man who thought he was invincible. It was glorious. When the news of David's affairs hit the headlines, the public's reaction was immediate. David's reputation, once built on charm and charisma, was shattered. David was cut off from the life he desired. He was on his own. Melissa, disgusted by his actions and his financial woes, promptly left him. She'd seen the end coming. The man who had left his family for her was now alone. The final act of revenge was a masterpiece of ingenuity. The sports car, a symbol of David's newfound success, disappeared in a flash. We worked with a towing company to have the car moved. It was a long, complicated maneuver, but the car was moved to a location that rendered it utterly useless. David called the police. But there was nothing they could do. It wasn't stolen. It just wasn't there. Then there was the house. David's house, the one that stood as a testament to his new life. It was a symbol of his betrayal, of the life he had built on the ruins of ours. We learned how he financed the house. With a series of carefully coordinated actions, we revealed the irregularities in the loan. The bank repossessed the house. David was homeless. It wasn't just a loss of property, it was a loss of status, a loss of identity. The satisfaction was immense. But it wasn't the end. The greatest joy was the look on my sons' faces. They had stood up to their father. They had won. They had taken back our family's honor. As time passed, our lives began to heal. The legal battles became more manageable. We moved forward. And together, we built a new life. We rebuilt our home. We created a new normal, one that was filled with love, laughter, and resilience. One day, the phone rang. It was David. His voice was raw, broken. He was begging me to stop. He said he was sorry, that he had made a mistake. I listened in silence. I allowed him to speak. He spoke of his regrets, of his loneliness, of his despair. But I knew that no words could undo the hurt he had caused, the pain he had inflicted. When he was finished, Ed, I hung up the phone. I didn't say a word. And I never heard from him again. I didn't feel happy. But I did feel relief. The weight, the anger, had finally lifted. I had been fighting for so long, that it was hard to remember the good times. But seeing him brought me back to those first days. Those first dates. The joy of family, of love, and of building a life together. I'm still healing, but I'm stronger now. Because I know that I can survive anything. The legal battles continued for years, but we persevered. We found new opportunities. We found strength in each other. Michael and Alex, once heartbroken, became the men I always knew they could be. They were compassionate, loyal, and filled with a sense of justice. And what of David? He vanished. He was a ghost, fading into the background. He had lost everything. The experience taught me the power of friendship, the importance of family, the courage to stand up for yourself. And, most importantly, it taught me the power of forgiveness. Not for David, but for myself. Because holding on to the anger, the bitterness, was only hurting me. I rebuilt my life, and I found love again. I met someone who understood what I had been through, someone who saw the woman I had become, not the woman David had left behind. Now, years later, I am at peace. I have found joy in the simple things, the laughter of my sons, the warmth of the sun on my face, the comfort of a loving embrace. To anyone who has been through a similar experience, remember, you are stronger than you think. You are not alone. And sometimes, the best revenge is a life well lived. Remember, never let anyone walk all over you. And if they do, well, sometimes a little bit of epic revenge can be the sweetest medicine.